So should we put this down if he's not, oh, this is me.
Yeah, you might want to say that you're not money.
Not that I get involved with that. I've thought that's really crappy.
Sport form.
Are we started? Yeah. We didn't hear the music.
Well, not till the TV.
Ask Al to do it again.
Okay, Randy.
Good evening and welcome to the August 19th regular meeting of the Edina School Board. We do have a quorum this evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the acceptance of our newly appointed board member, Brian Hedberg. Welcome, Brian.
Welcome. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate that. And board.
Second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting for July 15th. I get a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Minutes for the July 15th meeting have been approved, have been brought to the floor. Any additions or corrections to the minutes as written? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any member of the audience who's requested to speak this evening? Seeing none, we have our recognition tonight. We'd like to welcome the girls' golf team.
Yes, we do. So I'd ask Coach Harlstead and the girls to come up front here. We got to officially welcome if we just want to take a stand right here in front. Making you come to work even in the summer. Coach, how about if you come over here, please? So what I recall was a day in April when you were still practicing or attempting to practice golf in one of the gymnasiums, and you were telling me what a short season this was going to be, but you really thought if the season ever got decent, there was a chance.
You always have a chance.
You always have a chance. Tell us a little bit about the season and how you endured it, and a little bit about some of the highlights as you went through the conference right on to that state championship.
When we started the season, it was I made a comment to the parents early in the year that the latest I could ever remember starting the season was April 23rd. And when we kept getting closer to April 23rd, we were still indoors, and we started to hopefully get outside. And then when the season began, we actually had to go back inside because we got hit with 2 snowstorms at the end of April. And then it turned into be kind of a whirlwind with all the girls. And as a team, we decided that we were just going to try to put people in positions and see who could do well. And lo and behold, we played, I think, 12 matches in 13 days. And this was all probably the last 2 weeks of May. And our team kind of got stronger and stronger, and we were able to win the Classic Lake Conference, which I think was the first big step for us. And then when we got to the state tournament, we had some really good things, great performances by Emily Romano and Hannah Hankinson particularly, shooting scores under 80. And that was enough to allow our girls team not only to win our I think it was the 8th state championship, and which is the most in the state. But also we were able to score, I think it was the lowest 2-day total in the state currently. And I think the real exciting part is that a lot of the girls are returning. So that even makes it more special.
That's fantastic. Talk about your sense as, hole by hole. You're trying to track how the scores are going because you really don't know, because it isn't like the scorecards or scoreboards posted. How are you sensing? Was it going to go? Were you going to get the championship? How about your nerves?
I stayed pretty level-keyed. We have with some of the girls, the rule is I stay away from you, you stay away from me. And I think when that happens, I really didn't know what was going on, to be quite honest. But I have such great faith and understanding in their ability to play golf that they don't necessarily, at the end of the season, seeing us day in and day out. They knew what they needed to do. And I think one of the last things I said to the girls when we left the van on the rain delay on the last day of the championship was, gals, let's see if we can bring this back home. And sure enough, not only did we bring home a state championship, but we had one heck of a 15th year party for Miss Hannah. It was her birthday that day, which I think was pretty special for her.
Fantastic. And team, if you don't mind, how about if I pass the mic down, you give me a name, your lowest score. No, I was just kidding. Your name, your grade, if you're a senior, graduating plans that you have on for next year, and then we're going to let you go back to the putting green.
My name is Megan Herring. I just graduated and I am going to Boston College.
My name is Emily Romanow, and I'll be a senior this year.
My name is Ellie Hagan, and I'll be a senior this year.
My name is Isabel Oyang, and I'll be a freshman.
My name is Hannah Hankinson, and I'll be a sophomore.
My name is Mary Triggs, and I'll be a freshman at St. Ben's.
I'm Sydney Esses, and I'm off to Butler University.
I'm Peyton Fallstead, and I'll be a senior.
My name is Katie Engelking, and I'm going to be a sophomore.
And I'm assistant coach Kirsty Olson.
Well, Edina Hornets golf team, on behalf of the entire community, congratulations on a great state championship. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Next up, Dr. Dressen will walk us through tonight's agenda.
It is the summer agenda, as the board is familiar with. We are in pretty good shape, so a lot of the action items that we need to take place to get the the school year going occurred in our May and June meetings, but we do have a report on student wellness, as well as I'll give a quick district update of the latest happening as we gear up for the school year. We have some consent agenda items, a lot of personnel recommendations, obviously, as it's that time of year, a lot of hiring still going on. From the action standpoint, we have a vice chair position that we need to fill with former board member Adit Almag coming off. We have a position to fill. We have board agenda, just the list of agenda items that we have planned for the year. We've got our action plan to approve that we reviewed previously. Some notice for election that's required by state statute, a few budget enhancements and a contract and policies. That's our action items. We do have a discussion item around a birth through grade 5 study that we'll talk a little bit about tonight, but the action will take place on that in September. And then we close out with some information items, and that would conclude the board agenda for August.
Thank you, Rick. Next up, we have our student wellness report.
Randy Smazel, our Director of Teaching and Learning, and our Business Director, Margot Bach, are the two people who oversee our student wellness. It's actually an all-encompassing look at our students' health, and a lot of good things are occurring, and a lot of things have already happened. We also welcome Mary Lombardi, who's head of our food service program from Sodexo, who partners very closely on all this work. So welcome, team.
Good evening. This is our annual student wellness update. It's an annual requirement, and however, last year we did provide a semi-annual update in December due to all the changes with the federal food and nutrition guidelines, and we provided you an update mid-year. So we're just reporting since that time. We did continue with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act with changes in that regard because the federal government, with feedback throughout the nation, did make some modifications mid-year, and that's a multi-year plan, so we'll continue moving forward with that. We also had a partnership with Cornell and Concord and Crete Valley in terms of trying to encourage increasing students eating fruits and vegetables through maybe positioning in the where they are in the lunch line, maybe some marketing or education around the fruits and the vegetables. We're also partnering with Special Services for a student wellness fair this upcoming year. We continue to work on the wellness scorecard with our committee, and Randy will talk about that more in a little bit. And we've also surveyed staff and parents to find out. We surveyed parents last year. We've dove a little deeper into some information, and then also surveyed staff on overall student wellness. Our committee is representative. The parents represent all our building sites. We have elementary and secondary principal representation. Health services coordinator is on it. Sodexo staff, Mary and Teresa. Randy and myself are on the committee. And for 2012-13 nutrition review, Mary will present some data that shows that our students are eating nutritious breakfasts that we are providing, and that's increasing. Also, the purchase of combo meals in the secondary schools increased. We received our Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act certification right away last fall, and as a result are receiving the additional 6 cents as federal reimbursement, as I reported last December. We're providing an a la carte snack program for after school at Southview, and also in line with the overall student wellness, we're providing educational classes on nutrition and also assisting with physical activities for events like walks and run and biking to school. With that, I'll let Mary present some of the specifics on the data from this year.
Hey, Marco, could you just quickly define what you mean by combo meals, just so that people know?
Yep, I can do that. That's the reimbursable meal, and students have to choose at least 3 of the 5 components. And we educate them by using My Plate, because those are the 5 components we want them to choose, all 5 components if they can. But they have to choose 3 items for it to be a reimbursable meal. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So breakfast, we had a record year this year. We've been tracking breakfast since we started in 2008. And the biggest increase you'll see is on Concord Elementary School. You can see that huge increase this year. And what we did as a result of the Wildcat Wellness Committee at Concord, in partnership with them, we moved the breakfast from the basement where the cafeteria is to a cart at the entrance of the school. So when the students come in, they can grab their breakfast and take it to their classroom. It's made a huge difference in participation, and hopefully by eating breakfast, they're also improving their school activities and test scores. The one challenge we have right now in breakfast is middle schools, and we're looking at doing some things to promote that and advertise it more. But in overall, almost every school had an increase in breakfast this year, so that's a good thing. Combo meals in secondary school. Question?
Quick question. What portion of the breakfasts are free and reduced, or is it exclusively free and reduced?
No, it's not. In fact, at Concord, a large percent of the increase was, in fact, most of the increase was for paid students. Typically, most of their free and reduced students were already participating in the program. Many of the schools, especially secondary schools, the participation is students on free and reduced, but in elementary schools, it's a variety of students.
So if the carts at the beginning, in the front hallway as kids come in, seem to be the big driving force, are we looking to go that way at the middle schools and other schools to get the same results?
One of our goals for the upcoming year is to offer that, but that will be a school-by-school decision.
For the schools that offer Success Center before school, is the cart or the breakfast timed so that it's available when those students come to school?
That was the other thing we did this last fall, was both Countryside and Cornelia, we started breakfast earlier for those students. It had an impact at Countryside, it did not at Cornelia.
Okay. And then I guess the reverse for schools that offer Success Center at the end of the school day, is there a snack available for those students?
We do not do any snack programs currently in elementary schools. We are looking this year by request to do it at Valley View like we did at Southview last year. So there's always that potential if there's an interest to do it.
Because it could be a helpful boost for the students
Yes.
who do need to have that extended day.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So we're open to that.
And one of your comments in regard to you were glad to see the increase in the breakfasts. Why are we concerned that students aren't getting nutritious breakfasts at home, or is it there's just the time crunch and we're trying to fulfill that need for families?
In surveys we've done in the past of students, typically it's the reasons they say they don't eat breakfast is because of time. They don't have time.
Okay.
That's a typical answer. Secondary, this has been another goal of ours for several years, is to try to get secondary students to pick combo meals versus purchasing a la carte foods. We saw about a 3% drop in the participation at Valley View this year, and we attributed to a couple of things. One is with the new regulations, those serving sizes were reduced at the beginning of the year per the regulations. And secondly, we changed and offer now pasta and tacos every other day, and that school, the pasta was the #1 choice. But again, our goal was to encourage them to have variety in their meals and not eat pasta every single day. The one thing we're going to do based on classes, when I teach classes, we ask for feedback. The one common request I was getting is they'd like us to have our sandwich bar like we do at the high school, where they can choose what they want. So we'll be implementing that at both the middle schools later this fall so that they can make their choices for their cold sandwich of the day. And we'll see if that helps that participation of a combo meal. Now they get one sandwich that's pre-made that they can choose from. We did see increases, though, at Southview, almost over a 2% increase in the participation there and a slight increase at the high school. So they kind of compensated for each other. And then overall, combo meals. And that's overall for the whole district. And the School Nutrition Association collected data around the country. And because of the new regulations, they report that there's about a 10% drop in paid lunches, a 5% in reduced, and less than 1% in free lunches. We did not see that drop. We did see an increase, almost 10,000 meals this year. So we were happy that we didn't experience an overall drop in our lunches. We did participate in the Cornell University study that they're doing in the second level. They've done studies before about increasing selection of food, but our study was to look at the consumptions of fruit and vegetables. And we did those two at Concord and Creek Valley. We had control schools of Normandale and Highlands where we collected data on waste, and we talked about that when we were here last time. I still do not have results. We're still hoping to get them soon as to what those results were. But our company has taken full force those recommendations, and one of the things we did was post information about the fruits and vegetables, and that information was taken, our feedback, and redone, and now we'll be doing that in all schools. So when there's a fruit or vegetable of the day, they'll have these stickers by them, and they have a cute name to them, and then they give them some little nutrition tidbit about them as well. So you'll see those changes in all the schools this year based on last year. And then we're processed foods, and we showed this graph before. We did make another 5% reduction from October till May of this year. So an overall 11% reduction in the highly processed foods we serve. What we're looking at this year is really looking more at the products we have. In the previous years, we've looked at making more products from scratch, and now we're down to the point of looking at the individual products and working with our vendors and getting products that have a cleaner list of ingredients in them than we've had in the past, with our goal now to meet the expectation by the end of this school year for sure, if not prior to that.
Which leads us into our wellness scorecard and our committee work.
Good evening. So throughout last year, our wellness committee had been having discussions about how do we know that the wellness policy is being materialized across the district, that it is being applied systemically across the district, and to what degree? How do we know when we've reached vision around wellness, if you will? So we had a lot of dialogue about what are some of the metrics or elements of data that we really want to focus on around wellness. And wellness might not be the best term or the term that we have moving forward, but that's how we've been talking about it this past year. But what are those key metrics, those key things we want to pay attention to and measure, because we know they make a difference? And our wellness committee drafted some ideas around that. We took those ideas to our staff. We asked our nurses, we asked our social workers, we asked our psychologists, we asked our elementary teachers, we asked our administrators, and we asked them at the end of this last year. About 160 staff came back and responded to the survey, and they said, we feel that these are the most important things that we could take a look at under physical, mental, and social wellness of students. And you can see some of the breakouts of what physical and mental and social may mean. So this is continued work. What we're trying to do is develop the categories that we believe makes a difference in the learning of students. And our team is absolutely passionate about figuring out how do we continue to grow and improve student learning in Edina Public Schools. And we are a high-performing school district, but how do we take Edina Public Schools to another level yet? There are many pillars that impact learning, and wellness is definitely one of those. Our Education Secretary, Arnie Duncan, was recently quoted stating that no one is going to push harder for higher education graduation rates or higher graduation rates rather, and lower dropout rates, and more students graduating ready for college than I am. But the only way we get there is if our students' physical, emotional, and social needs are being met. I thought that quote was really interesting because it actually aligns very well with the conversation that we've been having in this Wellness Committee. In a study conducted by the U.S. Department of Ag, children who didn't eat breakfast showed a decline in memory and attention. Mary was alluding to that and how excited we are that the participation rates are going up because students express they don't have time to eat breakfast, but we know from the research that eating breakfast does help them focus, it helps them with memory, it helps them become better learners for that learning environment. In the book Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain, Harvard psychiatrist John Ratey explains the major benefits of exercise on the brain, how it can enhance a child's attention, memory, focus, and ability to retain what is taught, and describes in layman's terms how exercise accomplishes this. There's great research about what fitness does to the chemistry of the brain and how it preps the brain for learning. And those are all elements that we need to continue to look at to, again, arrive at another level of achievement here in Edina Public Schools. We're not going to take on all the problems affecting kids, but if there are issues that interfere with learning and there's something that we can do about them, why shouldn't those things get our attention? And so that's been our discussion to date with some of the metrics that we feel would be important to pay attention to as we try and define whether or not we've arrived in terms of wellness across the school district. In a recent survey to parents, our N value is 1,105, so 1,105 parents responded to this particular question on the survey. The question was around additional meal price costs and parents' willingness, or families' rather, willingness to pay to fund reduction and elimination of highly processed foods. So as we look at the data and the spread of the potential responses there, we could summarize the first 4 bar graphs from right to left and say that 57% of the survey respondents support a meal increase of up to $1 to have cleaner or healthier or less processed meals. We could also summarize by adding up the percentages on the 5 bars to the right that about 82% support a meal increase up to 50 cents to fund the reduction of or elimination of highly processed foods. So what this speaks to is the capacity in the community and maybe the urgency, the need, the interest in the community. Again, these are 1,100 respondents for this question, and it's a representative, but their willingness to see an increase in the price of the meals as a way to get a higher quality meal for their son or daughter. I think that willingness in that financial support is some interesting information in terms of where our community is at. So those are some of the updates we wanted to do this evening, and at this point we'll open it up to the board and our superintendent for questions.
Maybe I missed it, but can you go back to slide 12 and talk a little bit about how they're measuring processed foods?
So what I look at is I look at from year to year in October, how many things we had on our menu for that particular month that were highly processed. Meaning that they're things that are taken out of a package and put into an oven and baked off. So they have a long list of ingredients in them versus us making something like macaroni and cheese from scratch.
So the left, the 10 through 0, that's number
2010-11 school year. 2011-12, 2012. Oh, that's the percent on that's the percent we've decreased from one year to the next.
So what percent would you say we ended at in May of last school year? What percent of our meals were considered highly processed?
We've dropped it to less than 40%. I believe is the figure from last year. And again, it's how you count them, and that's what we don't see. It depends what you count as highly processed. So, for example, pizza would technically be a highly processed food, but it is something that we will continue to serve even though it's taken out of a container and we add toppings to it and bake it.
And French toast sticks?
That's one that's definitely highly processed, and we haven't removed it yet. We're trying to balance the amount of participation. It is the highest participation day, so that is one of the ones that we're still talking about in the Wellness Committee as to whether we continue. We may do something as we have done with other foods and offer them as a special occasionally instead of being on the menu routinely.
Well, in addition to cost, what are other barriers to transitioning to more unprocessed meals?
One of the things we're still faced with is finding products readily accessible. They're becoming more accessible because of reformulating products based on the new regulations as well. So we're finding, chicken products that are becoming much shorter, cleaner labels. A lot of the food items that we use, we're seeing better products out there. Probably not French toast sticks, though.
Another thing is that Mary and her staff work with students to develop the taste for it or educate them
Sure.
that this is something good. And so if it's just thrown at them, they're going to go to their favorite thing over here. But if we do some education around it, then hopefully gradually those changes can be more successful.
The other thing we find that is if we can start to have a product and let them taste it and sampling, that then we can get their buy-in on it. And so we've been slowly progressing those things. Let's try a new product, let you taste it, get you to buy it, so you'll buy it in place of French toast sticks or something else.
So,
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to the extent possible, it could be helpful for families to know this is what's happening with the education so that it can be supported at home. If we know the cafeteria is introducing a particular choice, fruits, vegetables, unprocessed food, as parents, we can say, yeah, this might be available for lunch, and we think
And
it's
I
a good
think
idea.
that's one exciting thing about the new website is, first of all, on the front page it says lunch, so people find us quicker. And secondly, we're now trained to be able to get and put information on ourselves, so we'll be more able to quickly put information onto the website, and those are some of the things we can highlight on the website.
So I'm still not understanding the graph. So how does the 50% in May correlate with the 40% of processed foods served currently?
The 5%, we decreased another 5% from October. So from October to May, we dropped another 5%. We're actually counting the number of items we serve
Okay.
and what percent of those items are highly processed by our definition, which wouldn't meet everyone's definition of highly processed, but the definition that we're using currently.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sort of. I wouldn't graph it that way, but sort of makes sense.
So they actually reduced it 6% the prior year and 7% the prior year
Correct.
and 9%.
But you don't know where you're
So on a
starting
declining
at.
scale.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree.
So there has to be a theoretical soft floor is where you're going, Mary, right?
Correct.
So you may say to the board that it probably won't go below a floor of 38%.
20%.
40%?
Yeah.
Is that where it is nationwide in a sense?
There isn't really nationwide data on that because it's a fairly new trend in schools. I'm working with 4 other school districts in our company and our national dietitian on a clean menu and what that's going to be. It's a fairly new trend in schools to look at. The other schools that have done it are schools that Lifetime Fitness are working with. So it's, there's not a lot of data out there on it yet.
I think it's a helpful thing to analyze. It's just a little confusing initially to understand.
Well, for the next report, we can tweak the graph a little bit.
Great.
Take that feedback. Also, this is something that our committee is going to continue working on in terms of where, based on the parent survey, the staff survey, and information that we have, where do we want to be in terms of processed foods? And we've gotten some great information. Now we're looking forward to this year and continuing finalizing the scorecard. And we'll be reporting to you again.
Other than your percentages and numbers, you talked about surveying the parents. What kind of anecdotal or informal feedback do you get from people on the directions that we're taking? I mean, are parents happy that we're doing this? Upset that we're, where are they?
I would say it's across the board. I didn't read all of them because there's many, many, many comments. I don't know if you read all of them. Some will say, no, we like it just the way it is, and don't be doing that. And there are others that want complete elimination, not one stitch of processed food. And so what we're trying to evaluate, and then there's everything in between. And so I think with the committee and the forms of feedback is where is that balance and the overall wellness and health of our students to include nutrition. And I think where our committee has moved in the last year and a half, 2 years, in talking about the overall health of the student, and nutrition is a component of that, is helping us with that conversation too. But we're trying, that's part of our goal here with this scorecard, is to define that for Edina.
Okay. Thank you.
One of the things we could also do, Lonnie, in follow-up is to go through those comments and code those, and we haven't done that yet, but that may be helpful.
I mean, I don't know whether it's worth it or not. You know, you've got a lot to do, and I don't want to add to your plate by any stretch of the imagination. So if that's something you don't think is worthwhile, then forget I said that.
Yeah, we can take a look at that and go from there.
So are we calculating the shift in highly processed versus what we're perceiving to be healthy food as an overall consumption level? You know, measuring entrees is one thing, what we're offering, which I'm understanding the chart is to be, but how about consumption? Are we tracking that?
And that's part of the Cornell study, was consumption, because that's what's really important, is what are they actually eating, not what they're taking or even what we offer. It's what are they eating, and can we increase that? So we hope after this study results are published that we can do further studies on that to see what is being actually eaten, because that's what we want to get to, is are we serving healthy food that they'll eat? Because that's the important thing.
Okay.
That was going to be my question, is I know we were having trouble, particularly at elementary level, with a lot of the healthy foods being thrown away and not eaten. And then my other question was in regard to the middle school. I know there's been some confusion about what makes the combo meal and then the pricing, and there was some concerns that kids were coming home and parents were checking the food accounts and they were spending more than they had thought. What have we done to eliminate the confusion, particularly at the middle school when they have so many choices?
We do have a video online that describes what a combo meal is, and hopefully now parents can more easily access that and find that for students. The other part is educating them in classes about what those combo meals are. And one of the things the survey that we did shows is whether parents feel they know what a combo meal is. And so we can now look at that data, and we have just got those results as to what schools we see that have a higher percent of parents understanding and why that difference would be. The last thing we do is in our cafeterias at the middle schools is a more clear indication of the signage of what is part of a combo meal. And probably the biggest, in the brief look at the results, Southview has more confusion. And we are moving equipment around so that we can separate those things in the cafeteria more readily. When you come in, you'll see combo food, and another location will have a la carte food.
Great, thanks.
Additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our leadership update. Rick?
Just getting it dialed in here. Again, it's a busy time of the year. The thought of us not being in a year-round school isn't really true because we have things happening every day. It's been a very busy summer. Our work, again, as we move forward, is moving our strategic plan into its second year, really taking a look at the next generation of Edina Public Schools and taking, again, what we do well and where we need to be going next. Our theme for the year is really advancing our partnerships, that we know the work that we're going to be doing really needs to be this partnership effort where everybody's involved, so it's all for all. And so we're growing our partnership work, growing our skills around that. A lot of training has gone on. And then we're also looking at new partnerships and different ways that we can do our reach, guided by our strong values. Those, again, have been part of this district for a long, long time. We care, we share, we dare. That'll continue to guide our work. But the partnership is really going to be our focus, that we don't plan on doing anything alone. We really want to grow this as a team effort. Some of the key pieces of our work going forward is that partnership thought, the importance of communications and how we stay connected. And you even heard in our wellness report how important that communication, that outreach is between the home and the school and between the students and the food service. And that's just true across the board. And we're excited to be implementing our communication plan this year that was approved earlier this spring by the board, which again will bring some consistency. I think you're finding it on our website already. And so we're seeing a lot of wins on that. We're going to be very data-driven in our work, and so that'll be another important step. And then expanding our leadership efforts, because we really, in the end, believe that leadership is everybody's responsibility. And so that continues to be the spark. We're doing a lot of training around that to continue to grow our leadership. And again, it's not with just staff, it's students as well. And seeing the opportunity there, looking at different models, even in our leadership with our parent community, to reach that mission of all for all. Our three big goals that the board will be formally acting on in our action plan still is around personalized learning system, of how do we do that, building this coherent and comprehensive programming, which really starts at birth and goes right through age 85 plus, and we're well into our community education program, where that's in its third year, and we're in a second year of our K-12 program with the study going on in our birth through 5. And then the 6 through 12 program is in implementation, and then growing our partnership work. The major initiative this year that we've talked about in previous months, but will move into action. One will be the secondary study that will be actually implementing it. And we have a team of 6 teachers working with our principals on the implementation of this. There'll be quarterly reports to the school board and outreach to the community along this. A lot of the work this year, again, will continue to be shaping those plans, doing some piloting and some project work, so that we really are in more full implementation in that secondary program in year 2014-15. Facility study will be another area that will be coming to the board yet this school year. Again, planning our future as it relates to our facilities, to make sure our facilities are 21st century ready and complement the programming we need to do. The all-for-all efforts of closing the gap, the academic, the access, and the opportunity gaps. Our e-learning square is our bring your own device. This is the technology that we've now expanded to 6th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade and 10th grade. And we've had a very rapid, active purchasing around that. And later tonight, the board will be approving our contract with Best Buy. And I'll ask Steve to give an update, because that's also beginning to be, well, we're the first district to enter into that agreement. That's becoming something now that is seeing a lot of popularity. The budget and staffing work is at constant measurement, and we did a lot of adjustments with our staff and budget last year, where we did some reductions and some enhancements to align better to our strategic work. And the last area that we'll be talking about tonight is the E5 study. In the E5 study, the birth through 5 study, we'll actually be looking at 3 different age groups. We'll be looking at a birth through age 3 and looking at what type of support we need to provide families in the early childhood years and parents. There'll be a second component, ages 4 to 1, grade 1, so we again build some continuity. And then the third will be grade 2 to 5. Same process, where we'll be updating the board and the community. There'll be a lot of community outreach efforts. Gwen Jackson and Randy Smazel will be guiding the work on that. It'll align well with our 6 through 12 program, and then continue to have the focus on our 3 big initiatives. As we do our work in that birth through 5 study, the core will still be around our excellence. And then what we'll be doing is looking at how we can advance our excellence. And so what are the turns and the twists, what are the enhancements, the improvements that we need to do in offering programs and services birth through grade 5 in our commitment to excellence, and how does that align for our full program. I'd ask Randy and Gwen if you have additional comments at this time. The team has not yet met, but I know you've done some initial planning, but thoughts or comments on the work that you're about to journey forward on?
We're just excited to begin this work because it ties directly to the work that we did last year in the secondary study. So finally looking at the whole piece, K-12. Our first meeting is this Friday, where we'll be pulling the group together and starting some initial conversation and planning regarding where we go from here. But just excited to get underway.
I think it's been nice to have the secondary study completed first, because that tells us the direction that we're going. And we've had several conversations with principals, and they're excited to get started as well. So, great opportunity.
We look forward to your leadership and the updates that you'll be bringing as we move through the year. It is preschool planning as we gear up, and a lot of events going on in the district. We've already completed a lot of leadership training, school improvement retreat. So this is where teams of teachers come in and work with principals on academic goals for the school sites that help improve the performance, very targeted based on data. We have our new teachers begin their training officially tomorrow. And then we have the welcome luncheon that the board and administration will be hosting. Our back-to-school workshop starts at 26th with our all-district gathering on the 27th, and then school officially begins early in September. As we look to the legislative session, it was a very active legislative session, and we're just beginning to really get good, solid information out of the Department of Education on some of the plans as they evolve over the next 2 years. State assessments, we're going to see some significant shifts on that. What's nice about this, the changes that the state approved through the legislative process align very nicely with what our work around strategic planning has been. The integration programs, this is related to our equity and race efforts. Again, we'll have stronger alignment, but we are pleased because the work that we're doing, I think, should dovetail well with what's happening at the state level, to make sure that we really are having a program that does close gaps. Teacher evaluation, you'll be learning more about that in September, but that's a big initiative going on in the district that we've been underway, working in cooperation with our Teachers Association on that work, and we'll be bringing that forward for board discussion. The teachers will also be voting on this, but it's been a big initiative. We're looking at all-day, everyday kindergarten. That would begin possibly in the fall of 2014. There's now funding available for that. Again, the district at this point does not have space. And so if we're going to do that, we'll have to figure out a way how we're going to address that. Administratively, we've been already working with architects, just looking at options. The other big news is the biggest change since the late 80s, I should say, is the new funding formula. And this has been a project that has had several studies and task force do the work, and this legislative session, it did get completed. It will be phased in over a period of years. Some of the most significant changes will happen next year, but we are working very closely with our financial consultants who met with the Finance Committee earlier this month to talk about some of those changes, and likely at a work session we'll be giving the board a full update. I'm going to ask Margot to talk a little bit about this location equity revenue, which was one of the changes that occurred in the formula that has been a big area of interest for metro school districts for several years. And Margot and the financial consultants, Eller Group, has been providing the information, trying to boil it down in some language that we can understand. I'm going to ask Margot to give us a shot at it.
Well, that's quite an intro.
Yeah.
When I reported the preliminary budget to you in June, all this information literally was just coming out almost hours before the June board meeting. So happy to be able to come back and provide a little bit more of an update. Location equity revenue affects the 7 county metro area school district, and it's $424 a pupil unit that actually is transferred off voter approved referendum, and then it's a separate source of local levy referendum or local levy as like a separate category. And districts can opt out of it. You're automatically, if you're in the 7 county metro area, you're automatically opted into it unless you choose to opt out. So we did have the district financial consultants come to the board finance committee meeting and talk about, well, what does this mean for Edina? And the advantages of staying in it, because they're all, the formulas are integrated, is if we opted out, we would lose about $200,000 worth of what's called equity revenue. And so obviously we would want to do that. And also it provides, for future planning, longer term, provides more room under the referendum cap. Right now we are currently above the cap under the old existing formula. What this does by moving the $424 over to local equity revenue And their recalculation in all of this formula, it frees up, we now are below the cap, and it frees up dollars that we are able to go and ask the voters for, if we so choose. There's that option at least to be able to make a decision. We're not recommending that necessarily at this time, but we haven't been able to have that discussion for a number of years. So that is something that it does do for us. And then it also allows the district to access our entire voter-approved levy authority. As I reported in June, we have one of our levies has an inflationary increase in it. And because we have already reached the cap, we are not able to tap into that small inflation. It's not a lot, but a little bit of an inflationary increase every year because we're at the cap. By moving this, we'll be able to tap into that. So the recommendation of the Finance and Facilities Committee was that we would opt in or automatically be opt-in to the location equity revenue. More details in what that looks like for our district, I will work with Finance Committee in September when we receive our levy certification documents from the department. What we're really waiting for is to see all the formulas. There's so much that has changed, and really how does that play out in terms of taxes for our local taxpayers, revenues up or down, and that kind of thing. So this is more of a quick update, and then stay tuned because more will be coming. And then the other piece, do you have the other one in here too?
Pardon?
Oh, there you go. The other component, levy component or option that the district has is to convert $300 of a levy referendum, voter approved, to board approved levy authority by September 30th. We reviewed that also with the financial consultants, the Finance and Facilities Committee did, and there really isn't, there's not additional revenue or benefit at this time for Edina to opt into that option. And so at this time, we're not recommending converting that. So in both cases, doing nothing keeps us where we should be and where Finance and Facilities felt we should be. These are annual options we'll be able to consider and have discussions about. And we discussed that in Finance Committee, and we also discussed the importance of seeing for the first time with all these formula changes that levy information in our September certification and December certification to truly see how does it impact our district overall and also our local taxpayers.
Questions, comments?
Margot, are they one and the same essentially? You have the option to either have the new location equity revenue or to shift the authority to the board? Is that the way I'm to understand the two slides?
There was discussion about that at the legislature, but you can actually do both. The interpretation from MDE is you can actually do both. Many of the districts that are choosing the $300 conversion are districts that have referendums that sunset in less than 5 years, and our two sunset in 5 and 9 years. So for us, that wouldn't be something we would look at right now. In other districts, so the $300, if a district has less than $300 in a current referendum, maybe they have $100, maybe they have $0, they are able to approve this resolution and get up to $300 in board-approved levy authority. So it's actually increased revenue for them. So the districts I'm hearing about that are taking advantage of this option right now are those that have under $300 in referendum revenue, those that have referendum sunsetting in 5 years or less, because you have to authorize this every 5 years, and that those that are strategically, they're going out for elections and strategically looking at how do they structure their election question. But it is both, even though there was discussion about keeping it's one or the other.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you both.
Stay tuned, and it is going to be an interesting levy document that the board will be taking a look at and the community will be taking a look at in September, because that'll be really our first chance to break it. And we've seen general number runs, but not really category by category. That will help us understand more about this funding formula change And again, it is going to be new revenue, and it should help in our planning process going forward.
Thank you. Next up is our consent. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Rick, could you please walk us through tonight's consent agenda?
Consent agenda, again, personnel recommendations, pretty straightforward, a lot of hiring, and it has been a very competitive year of still doing some last-minute hires on teaching staff, and that's true not just in Edina, but that's pretty much across the metro area. But we do have a strong team in place ready for the year. Community education personnel recommendations as well. We have the agreement modification, a slight modification in the Edina Hopkins educational partnership. This partnership, it does not involve anything to do with properties or anything. This is really an educational partnership that the board approved in May. Hopkins did not meet during the summer months, so they came back with some minor changes in it and asked that we support that. Again, we worked with their council on that, and the changes, again, will really focus on more around the teaching and learning areas, some technology work where we can cooperate, and some staff development or professional.
Was that added to the board book? I don't know that we have that in our
I was
packet.
just going to say, is that on tonight's agenda?
Yeah.
So that was not put on.
None of us have read that.
Well, that's because I have an old agenda then, so never mind that. I am sorry. It is some minor change that we'll make, but we'll bring it back for board action when we have it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the last is the gifts from the girls hockey boosters, and that would conclude the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Rick. Any items anybody'd like to remove from the consent agenda or other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to the action portion of this evening's meeting. Can I get a motion to open nominations for vice chair?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. I'm open to accepting any nominations.
I move that we appoint Lonnie Screntner to fill out the term of Edith as vice chair till the end of the year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Additional discussion? A motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Lonnie.
Thank you.
It was efficient.
Next up, we have the agenda, 1314. We've seen this a few times. We've had a few items filled in here. Can I get a motion to bring it to the floor?
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Comments? Conflicts? Additions? Corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the Leadership Action Plan for 13-14 school year. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
And this is part of what you reviewed with us just now,
That's great,
Rick,
and
correct?
we've been,
Yes.
yep.
We've seen this a few times. We've discussed it. We saw a presentation tonight.
I had a question for Sarah before about whether or not the board was aligned with each of the initiatives, so that there was alignment, for instance, associated with, one aspect or the other. And there seems to be 7 board members, so it would line up pretty well.
There it is.
A lot of them do tend to line up more with teaching and learning currently, was my direct answer, because he was referring to the chart where we had the 6 big initiatives.
Yep,
And they do tend to fall heavy on teaching and
yep,
learning.
on the programming side.
Right.
Additional questions, discussion, thoughts? All those in favor of approving the Leadership Action Plan for 2013-14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The motion to approve the notice of the school board general election for school board.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Margot, background?
This is a resolution officially that the board is approving the school school board election so that we can pass the information on to the county auditor and get ballots and prepared, et cetera, et cetera. The names are not filled in. There's language in here that does state that that will be completed and filled in, and the clerk, Regina, will be involved in that.
Thank you.
But we do, as a recap, have 4 seats open.
Yes.
And the time to submit to run has closed since then.
The time to, yes, and also the time to withdraw has closed.
Correct.
Thanks, Margot. Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Budget enhancements for student support services and elementary math specialist positions. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Background?
Both of these positions, or the requests are, one is for in the area of special education, and Penny and her team has been working on creating a model that will be successful. We have had some new students move in that require some additional staffing support. This will allow us to make sure that those staff are in place that first day of school. We also have some elementary math specialists. This was some one-time funding that, or some funding that we received through a state grant, and we're able to now move to full-time math specialists, which is something, again, from a strategic standpoint, we're hoping to do. Both of these requests, we typically bring in October, but again, we felt value in bringing them now so that we could start the year with this. Again, if we don't hit enrollment projections, then we would make internal necessary budget adjustments so that we would still keep our budget where we want it to be on the long-term side of this. Both of these requests are for one-time funds, so that means that at the conclusion of this school year, those positions have to be rebuilt into the budget if we are going to maintain these positions.
Discussion?
I like the fact that we're doing it now, that we're going to have it at the beginning of the school year. I think that makes a great deal of sense.
I would agree. Any other comments?
I like the fact that we're going to full-time math specialists. I think that's really, really important.
Anybody else? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Budget enhancements. And next up, we have the Best Buy contract modification. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Steve, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Board. Wanted to update you on the e-learning squared initiative. It's going very well. We've had a Get Connected Day at Valley View, and we had a number of parents come in and ask questions. Tim was representing the department. He said he didn't hear one bad comment. He was a lot of parents were appreciative of the customer service. To date, we sold over 500 devices through the process. The vast majority of those being Chromebooks, and so that seems to be the device. Based on the volume that we're seeing through this partnership, we went back to Best Buy and asked if we could renegotiate some of our pricing. This addendum reflects a change in price from $210 that we would pay for the service fee down to $200. That still provides ample discount for our families for the device and Best Buy Geek Squad support in our buildings.
Of the 500, do you know how it breaks out between 6th and 9th grade or 9th grade families?
We don't have that level of detail yet, but I've requested that. Our liaison with Best Buy was on vacation today, and so I've asked for that report.
And this 500 is for this school year, the ones that have just been bought over the summer, not the ones from the previous program?
Correct. If we added last year's, we're probably close to 1,000 devices.
I do want to just thank you and your team, Tim Barrett and Patrick Blair from Best Buy, for the responsiveness with the families who are working with this and for putting in a lot of time and energy to make the program happen.
I think we're listening very closely to our families to try to improve. We are learning as well, and I'd like to also acknowledge Tim as being the project manager for this this initiative and the stellar work that he's done.
Agreed.
And you'll have the same, Tim will be at Southview's Get Connected Day next week for parents who have questions and.
This week. So on Wednesday, he'll
this
be,
week. Oh.
he, Mike, and myself should be on with Geek Squad and Patrick there
Oh,
to
great.
also do purchases. So we had a lot of parents actually purchasing the day of, and they were astounded that they made the purchase and they could go to the Eden Prairie store and pick up the device. So it was almost
That's great.
instantaneous for our families.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve, do you also want to mention Best Buy's, I mean, the level of interest there now? Out of this idea that it was incubated here and came out of our school district, how it's evolving?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we are kind of blazing a trail, and so last year, Best Buy and Edina Public Schools really worked in pilot mode, but from this pilot, Best Buy is seeing over 190 school districts approaching them for this same model in their school districts. Tim receives countless emails from other school districts. We received one this week from St. Paul Public Schools. We're constantly hearing from other school districts where they're seeing this as a unique partnership, private education family partnership where we are all working together to provide a digital device in the hands of our students.
And do you anticipate that this fee being charged will go down as the volume continues to grow? Is that sort of how you're thinking about this, or is this just sort of a one-time adjustment?
No, I think we'll continually monitor the service fee. The service fee is broken up into two parts, the fee for the web store and then also the Geek Squad support. We want to ensure that there is adequate level of Geek Squad support for our students and our families, but that piece is definitely one that we'll watch. If that looks like we have excessive Geek Squad support or we're not utilizing that all, we'll come back and look to modify that contract again and reduce the price.
And are we tracking free and reduced participation versus the balance of students? And are those similar, or is there additional outreach we need to do to facilitate that?
It's a great question. We track that very closely, and so what we do is we have separate communications and additional reach outs to the families of free and reduced lunch to let them know they have options in this. They either can participate in the web store if they want, or we do have devices that we provide to those families that need them that they can access through a checkout through DMTS. And so we do touch base with them in a letter, we follow up in a phone call, then we also work at the middle schools to go back around one more time and touch base with those students to ensure that they have a device.
With the addition of sixth grade this year, are we doing anything to the Geek Squad sort of schedule? Are they going to be around more, the same? How is that going to work?
So the schedule's put on, it's going to be more, and so we are rolling Geek Squad up into the high school, and so there'll be Geek Squad support hours in the high school, then there'll be Geek Squad support in both of the middle schools. What we do is we set a schedule that is kind of heavy in the front end, and so there'll be more days, and then as we find that it starts tapering off, we'll probably back away. One thing that we're watching very closely, and we hope if there's hours left in the Geek Squad support, is to engage the Geek Squad in actually providing smart bar training for our students so that they can actually train up our students so that those students can be fellow Geek Squad certified technicians as well. So we're monitoring that bank of hours, and our hope is that we're going to be able to create Geek Squad technical support students as well.
Cool.
Steve, I have one question for you. Coming onto the board, how long is this agreement? Is it a one-year term, a two-year term, a five-year term? I just don't have any context.
It's a 1 or a 3 year, and so we can change it we can either adopt to have it an annual or a 3 year. Right now, it is an annual contract.
All right. Is there any way to get calculators in this?
Second.
They don't have to buy that one anymore.
Oh.
Well, no, we still need calculators, though.
Right, we need
It's
calculators.
irrelevant.
I'm thinking about the $200 calculator.
Yep.
We're working our way through it.
All right.
And just for the audience, the free and reduced, how are they handled? Or that's really the novelty behind this whole store concept?
Certainly, what we do is we email to and phone call to our families, all of our families, but we changed the message a little bit for our free and reduced lunch families to let them know they have options. And so they can either participate in the Best Buy web store, which case we track that. And the cheapest product right now for families is a $29 tablet. And so that's an Android tablet that's $29. Or if they would like, they could opt to get a unlimited checkout of a Google Chromebook from DMTS. And so what we do is we actually own that device, but we check that device out to those families so that they can use that device indefinitely.
So it's transparent to students, it's transparent to staff on how this is being handled.
It's actually, the Google Chromebook seems to be the most popular device that our families are purchasing, and it's the exact same device.
Say the biggest question I've been hearing from parents with kids going into 6th grade particularly, and this may be kind of a Randy question, but how are we going to use these? What are our kids going to be doing with these in terms of the curriculum?
I'll jump in, and I think Randy will probably have some good points as well. This is a multi-pronged approach, and so the device is one aspect of it. The working with families on the education as we look to how digital devices play and what are the rules that we set in our home and our boundaries. And then also really critically is how our teachers utilize these devices in instruction. And so Tim and the TOSAs, along with the curriculum coaches, are really working on ways that we can utilize the technology in innovative ways in our classrooms. I know Tim is planning on meeting with every 6th grade and 9th grade teacher again. Our initiative is great change starts with small steps, and so we are really going to look at working with our teachers to meet them where they're at and move them forward. But then we are also engaged with the curriculum department also as we look at digital assets and digital curriculum.
One of the recent collaborations that started across the metro is with about 20 different school districts collaborating on a large project coordinated through District 287 to create 40 digital courses by 2015. And that content will be available for students, for first of all, teachers to use in classrooms from grades 3 through 12 in the next few years. Many districts across the metro area are looking at how they can use digital curriculum as a resource for learning. And many districts are even looking at how that digital content will at some point replace many textbooks. It will probably not replace all textbooks, but it is certainly going to change the landscape of what the learning environment looks like for kids. So there are many resources available from a digital standpoint for student learning in the classroom. 6th grade social studies has digital content that was developed through 287. It is a supplement to the curriculum. So there's already digital content available as an example for that particular course. Again, as Steve mentioned, our curriculum TOSA is continuing to work with teachers around how we develop digital content that is engaging to students and motivational to students. And we also have tools around assessment. We have a program called NICU where teachers can use it to assess the learning on individual standards for individual students, and that can be done through digital devices right in the classroom. So the need to do assessments on paper pencil can be minimized in classrooms that have digital devices, and then that also produces greater and more frequent feedback when programs like that can be utilized. So it doesn't replace all paper, but it certainly can add benefits and to a classroom in terms of activities and experiences kids can have, and it can also increase the pathways through which students can learn and master these standards.
Thanks, guys.
Additional questions, comments? Thank you both. All those in favor of approving the amended Best Buy contract, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now open to a motion to combine in section G, items 1, 2, 3, and 4 into a single motion. They are all updated policies.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to combine items G1 through 4. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of combining, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Who would like to start? First item is 421, personnel, gifts to employees. We've seen this before.
There are no changes to this since we last saw it at our July 15th board meeting. And I guess I would go on to summarize that that is the same for policies 421, 423, and 424. 431 does have a minor change, which is noted in board book, where we deleted in paragraph 3B, technology support specialists, as it is no longer relevant to the group that's being talked about in that policy for compensatory time.
So that's page 123.
Thank you. Page 123, yes.
Thank you, Regina. Any other thoughts or comments around any of those 4 policies? Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving amended policies 421, 423, 424, and 431, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And then we have to rescind policy 420. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
This is a policy that, number one, it's not an MSBA policy. Number two, we came to the historical conclusion that it was probably passed back when AIDS was a big hoop-de-doo, and it really has very little bearing anymore.
Excellent. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of rescinding policy 420, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion items? Birth to grade 5 programming study. Who's up?
So, again, this was talked about during the update. Again, it frames why we're doing it. It takes the data of kind of the history of the district and takes a look at that and frames this. It takes a look at what cannot be part of the solutions as we bring recommendations forward, and that includes that it doesn't align with the grades 5 through 12 study, that it wouldn't create inequities, that it exceeds funding availability. So there's a lot of limitations that really gives the parameters for the study team to work on. And then the recommendations, again, as I mentioned, it's going to be broken down into 3 different groupings. Birth through age 3, ages 4 through grade 1, grade 2 through grade 5. The study team will be, again, shepherded by Randy and Gwen. The elementary principals will be the key players on that, but this really is a team effort, again, where we'll be seeking a lot of input from teachers, parents, students, and again, also working very closely with the staff that are involved in our grades 5 through 12 study. It does lay out a time frame that would have recommendations coming back to the board in February or March of 2014. Likely, again, we'll follow that same pattern where we'll have periodic times where we'll be seeking input and then also coming back to report back to the board. The key piece, again, will be this alignment between the birth through 5 and the 6 through 12 studies. But Gwen or Randy, if you want to talk further about it, I think it'll follow a similar format, Randy, as far as community meetings and things that we've done in the past.
It certainly is an opportunity to engage with the community, our staff, and our students about what the next generation of E5 education looks like in Edina. And one of our things that we'll be doing with this group is kind of looking at it in 3 categories: this birth to age 3, looking at the educational development in that arena, and then from age 4 to grade 1, and some of those transitional years through kindergarten, And then also looking at grade 2 to grade 5 and the preparation that is done for students headed into middle school. Again, a phased approach, but looking forward to soliciting the input from families and community members as part of this process and dialogue as we go through this study.
I guess I'm supposed to be. The move to all-day kindergarten for all students, is that going to be dealt with separately, or are we going to fold that in? So I'm asking, are we going to be dealing with that on a different timetable? So we'll be talking about that before February of next spring?
Yes, it is our intent to begin talking about it very soon this fall yet and come back to the board later in the fall.
Okay, so that's part of the, would be part of the whole birth through 5, or grade 5 initiative, but we're going to fast track that piece of it?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that's important to note, in the birth through grade age 3 and the age 4 to grade 1, we're looking at coordinating programs. It isn't like we're going to overtake all the programming, but again, how do we, and we've got a lot of good cooperation already going on with our various preschools and various opportunities for learning prior to that kindergarten year, where we have a good working relationship. We'll continue to work that relationship going forward.
Do we know what types of things we're looking at in the study? I mean, are we looking at, the fact that we have 6 schools, that we have, French immersion, we have continuous progress? I mean, are we going to look at, there's continuous progress in 2 different buildings? What types of things are we looking at in this study?
I think those are great questions. I think one of our first meetings is to really kind of generate and identify what are those major tasks or milestones that we want to address. We have been collecting questions from our principals that they are suggesting in terms of things that we need to investigate, things that we need to look at. Certainly, I have heard over the last year, what about other languages? What about a world language center? There have been a number of questions that have come up at different times, and I think that's what we'll have to do, is get all the questions on the table that we want to try to digest.
So we are looking at that choice program. The other thing we're looking at is just the whole, having our elementary schools be more reflective of the demographics within our community, and how do we address that? And we've been monitoring that for the past few years, but that'll be a continued area that we'll have to look at. Obviously, facilities will be another big piece of this, of how we manage the facilities, not only all-day kindergarten, but just what are the facility demands as we look to the future. And then our site-based special education programs, we've done some study work on that, but I think that'll also be part of taking a look at this program.
Capacity comes to mind here. We've got a high school study we're trying to wrap up. We've got this one. I see 16 meetings between now and February. Are we really taking that into consideration with everything else going on?
We are. What more can I say?
So you think it's realistic to accomplish what we want to do by February?
We are going to try. And if we don't think that we are able to, we will come back.
Yeah,
and ask for an extension.
I'd support that. I mean, we had targeted, I think, a March timeframe for the secondary study, and we ended up bringing it in May, simply because we just did not feel the work was ready. And we have that phased-in approach. So we aren't going to have a timeline where a number of meetings dictate our plans for the next generation. Edina Public Schools, we're going to make sure that we have a process and that the data is gathered in an appropriate fashion, and we have the capacity to manage it. So I think those are all good questions that we're going to have to, but we have a very aggressive plan going on.
And is the goal to start implementing at least some of the steps a year from now?
We would probably do some piloting. It would probably mirror, I think, what we're seeing in the secondary study. But facilities will probably be something that will come back to the full board as we talk about facility plans. Again, so we've got that facility task force that's also doing study, and they're going to be dependent on the information of the elementary, or the birth through 5 study, in the 6 through 12. So there's a lot of, where we're going to really have to be working and communicating together to make this all happen.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Any additions or thoughts, the context, the why, the not how, or the what? Everybody's comfortable with all of those? And this is coming back next meeting for board approval?
That's correct.
The one thing that I am very pleased to see is the strong language about aligning with the secondary program. My concern is, I don't want to frustrate this birth through 5 team because they're going to be aiming at a moving target. Because the secondary study, we're still working on implementation. And so to align with something that's being implemented is I don't see any other way to do it, but I think it's important for the team to, have that front and center, that's going to probably, my guess, be a little frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's the part of the coordination between what this group is doing and what the other group is doing. So it certainly speaks to the need to have some clear communication going back and forth as that secondary implementation continues to evolve. As I kind of go back and review some of the questions that have been generated so far, I think it relates to what you're saying, Lonnie, in that they want to know how well we are preparing elementary students for their future learning and their future success and being middle school readiness really for these kids moving on. So certainly that connection to secondary programming is critical, and that conversation is going to have to just continue.
I just have to, the document, still not my favorite format for, I read it and I find it difficult to really, want us to approve it, but it's just, it's a bit nebulous, yes. I'm not, we're approving the study and going forward, I guess, is the way I look at it, more than the content of the document, because it's, the what's, the whys, but.
Yeah, that's exactly, you're approving the study,
Process.
the process, of this is how it'll be done, this is the people that'll be involved, this is the areas I'll be looking at, these are things that they can't move into, these are the things they have to move. And then it is, the key is the ongoing communication. And I think we had these same questions about the secondary study when we came out of the chute. So I just think we have to keep working it. There's other formats we could use, but in the end of the day, the same type of questions, I think, or the same limitations, givens. Language changes, but I think you're going to see that. And it is a big study.
Yeah.
So I understand the responsibility you feel as a board to approve and support this. I get that. And that's why I think what we found from last time, that we wanted regular check-ins and that you got to know the team as well. And so we'll make sure that. And the other thing is we need to make sure the community is aware too, so that all of a sudden in February they're finding out this is what's happening. And I think we found pretty good success in how we did the secondary study and the amount of data that we received. And we're going to continue that effort going into implementation. But I think what we learned from last study effort at our secondary level will be helpful in this work.
Will there be any sharing of funds, or funds that come back into the general fund from community education or otherwise as a result of, this study, or is it being looked at all in that
Yep.
light?
So
Is that,
yeah, our tagline is that the learning is a constant. The facilities, the talents, the time, the funds, and the space are the variables. So we do need to look at that as funds as one of those variable areas. How we staff these might look different,
Right.
And this, again, isn't trying to make every elementary look the same. Clearly stated in the givens is that each school has its own culture.
Right.
So we want to maintain, we don't want to lose that. So that's that whole thing of Edina excellence, and how do we advance it? So we're still going to stay strong with our core of how we've defined excellence. It's just how do we move it forward.
And will the committee be able to, in a sense, flex that standard of excellence to Sarah's point before, that if the administration understands very well that a foreign language-based school tends to provide perhaps a more rich learning environment, not saying that it necessarily does, but if that's something the administrator feels strongly about, would that be something that the administration would sort of flex towards in the discussion? In other words, are there gravity points that you're headed towards? They're concrete as opposed to, you know, here's the process that you're walking through. Because I've found in my last run through the school board that if the administration has some goals in mind, of course, it tends to bring the community discussion to a finer focus within this time frame that you're talking about, obviously.
So the study's format, and I'll let Randy and Gwen comment as well, but the study format was based on the approved strategic plan. And in the approved strategic plan, we were looking for another choice option to be considered at the elementary level. And so in that planning process, world language, STEAM or STEM, you know, that was another area. There were some other options considered, but I think we are looking at that, and whether we want to do that. We talked about even looking at some type of boutique, small elementary. I think that might be an option too. Again, trying to look at different ways, schools within a school. I mean, just all those things. And yet, in the strategic planning process, we also said, do we need to have 2 schools that have continuous progress? So those are all things that were talked about in the strategic planning process that will influence the initial work going forward. But I think as the data comes in, and if you want to talk about how data influences the work, maybe that might be helpful, what we found from the secondary study.
So as we went back out to the staff and to students and then to the community, we did surveys and collected that data. And then we also looked at the comments, the anecdotal comments that people listed in the survey, and then coded those. And we had just from our online survey, we had over 10,000 comments from staff or from community members. So then we took that data and we really looked at what are some of the major themes that people are saying or suggesting. And as we went through that process last year, some themes began to emerge out of that data. We're commonly hearing this. 420 people commented about this. 550 people commented about this. And that's how we started to generate some of the original options in the secondary study. And then once we were able to generate some of those options, taking that back out and then getting more specific questions and feedback around those options. So our initial process really started with an open brainstorm. We asked about 200 staff, 200 family members, 200 students, what does the next generation of Edina Public Schools look like in terms of secondary education if you were living in the future? 3-4 years out, what would it be? And then that was the initial brainstorm, found the themes, then took the themes back out for feedback. So I think we can get after what are those specific kinds of elements that the community, the staff, our administrators are really thinking about through a process of brainstorming and refinement like that. We just have to kind of work through some of those steps.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Moving on then, we have some information. Items in our packet, updated student handbook, some appendices, some of the policies, field trips, on to announcements. Announcements, Rick?
Just to let the board know that we are continuing with our planning process. So Concord Elementary's had our major remodeling going on, and we are going to be right at the wire trying to get that set up. Classrooms will be set, but again, we're guessing there will be some construction. We're working closely with the city as far as it'll be, you know, safe and a place for students to be. But again, just working on some of the details of the project will probably take us possibly into the school year in some of the areas of the school, but not in the classroom areas. The Southview Middle School did have some graffiti that was sprayed on the buildings a little over a week ago. We continue to work with law enforcement and families in that effort and expect to have closure on that situation probably within the next week, having good cooperation, and it's an unfortunate thing, but we're going to see the opportunity in it and continue to move forward with that. Mentioned about the back-to-school day earlier, would again encourage board members if you're able to attend some of those events, and we can work on the details of that. We do have 9 candidates who have applied, as we mentioned earlier, for the board, 4 board spots in November. We do not have a primary. The district did take action, so that was not something that we need to have. So we will have 9 candidates running for 4 spots. The administration will work closely with the candidates to make sure they have the information available necessary for them to do their campaigning. The district will be rescheduling our meeting with the city council for September, and we'll possibly be looking at a date either the 9th of September or the 23rd. The council just had some conflicts that it couldn't walk away from. Then also the Unite Edina 273 group did meet with our policy committee earlier this month, and based on that they'd come to our full school board earlier this spring, and then we had determined as a board that would be the best place for further discussion to occur at the policy level, the policy committee level, and I guess have the committee members if they want to comment on the presentation and the sharing that was done at that meeting.
We took our task to meet with this group, and just recently we had our 3rd meeting with the group Unite 273. They had a substantial presentation that day, mostly relating to the history of their area, where they showed the lack of housing that existed when decisions were made about the lines, and they reiterated their request to meet with the full board. We shared the information that we had from our legal counsel that pretty much determined that within state statute and as a state-created entity, there is no action that we can take. We pointed out that we're following state statute and that there are a significant number of properties. They represent 400 and some properties, but there are 3,600 properties in the city that are not in the school district: Richfield, Hopkins, St. Louis Park, Bloomington, and Eden Prairie. And so, to do something for their group without doing anything for the others is not truly Unite 273. They couldn't understand why we wouldn't support their efforts, and they pointed out that we lobby the legislature on other issues. And we pointed out that we lobby the legislature as part of MSBA and part of AMSD, that we lobby on common good kinds of things like funding and standards and items that affect everyone, not something that is special to us. And both of those organizations with whom we work opposed the legislation that was presented last year to change the statute. Our committee does not see a need for Unite 273 to be added to a future board agenda. We explained that we are a school board that relies on our committees, and thus our report, this report to the board, was the best way to go forward. We're certainly open to any questions from our colleagues about what occurred and if you have any other further thoughts.
It's a very nice summary, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Additional items?
Just that we'll probably be also talking to the board about a updated demographic study, given some of the construction going on in the community, just preparing us of what that could mean for school district, and also welcome Ellen Knappenberger to our team. Ellen's part of the communication department and is pinch hitting for Sarah tonight, and that fulfills our communication team, as it were, and is a great asset, and we welcome him.
Welcome. Any other additional committee reports? Comments? Seeing none, I'll now accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Any objection to adjourning at this time? Seeing none, we are adjourned.